That's right, Pam and Jack. Who would have thought that having money can actually create problems? And we're not just talking about the super rich here. According to the Federal Reserve, 1 out of 5 of us is expecting some sort of inheritance. On average, we're talking maybe $25,000, and that's just enough money to unravel even the closest of family ties.
My Aunt Audrey was a very special person.
Audrey was blind, played the piano from the time she was 4 years old. We were just inseparable. People still talk about it.
They convinced Audrey to give them a power of attorney over her Merrill Lynch account. There's a paper trail of a number of cash transfers for about $3,500 just on the day she died alone.
I was included in nothing. The only thing I did want were the personal things, and they were not in the will, and I was not given them. It was the worst thing. I was devastated.
To loot an estate and take advantage, especially of someone who's handicapped and who's dying, I really am outraged.
We as a family are still all close. On the Reinfeldt side, the friend side, you can forget. I wouldn't bother with any of them.
We did settle. They ended up with more of the share than they would have. I would have been busting that door down a lot sooner, asking a lot more questions and trying to be a lot more involved.
I don't know who I would have yelled and screamed to, but yes, I would have.
But if it's somebody you care about, try to stay involved. Mom, dad, aunt, uncle, do you have everything in order? Have a good estate lawyer, get them to the right professional.
Start early enough. You must tell that to everybody. It is urgent.
Well, the Reinfelds have their regrets, along with millions of other families dealing with this very same issue. The worst part, when family members can't agree, everyone loses. The legal fees alone can eat up about 1/3 of the value of an estate. But there's good news. There's a way to protect your money and keep those family relationships intact. There are a ton of baby boomers who are doing just that. And we found out about one such family in the pages of Kiplinger Personal Finance magazine. We were so impressed with their approach to this that we had to come here to Yarmouth, Maine to meet them for ourselves. Hey, how are you?
Good.
Thanks for having us. Good morning. Eldon Morrison tells me his family enjoys the good life these days.
So you got some spare time on spiking that stuff.
He credits most of that success to the construction business he started some 20 years ago. But it was just 5 years ago, while standing in the middle of a busy construction site and approaching his 60th birthday, Eldon says he realized that not one of his children was in line to take over the business he had worked so hard to build.
It's a case where you build up wealth over a period of time, and then you say, what do I do with it? And you have to make some decisions.
So Eldon turned to his friend and financial advisor, Phil Harriman, to help him put an estate plan together.
It's time to sit down and talk about what you've built and where you want it to go from here.
Phil suggested they start with a family retreat, just to figure out what roles his daughters, Stacy, Denise, and Susan, would play in the business, and to broach the delicate topic of who would eventually get what and why.
Today, all 3 families, his daughter and 2 of his son-in-laws, are actively engaged in the business. They have specific leadership roles in the company.
When we had a moment alone, Eldon confessed to me that it wasn't just the business he was worried about. He hopes to keep the peace among his daughters by not repeating a critical mistake his own father made.
He chose to divide his estate up into thirds, just 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. And I didn't think that was fair. My sister and I got into an argument about the homestead, and that is still going on. We aren't talking to each other anymore. We aren't communicating at all, except through lawyers, which is no good either.
And these 3 daughters discovered that dividing things equally probably wasn't going to work for their generation either.
It's always been 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 for 3 of us. So then you start working that, you're thinking, well, how can you really make something in a state or a company work in thirds? You can't. So you kind of have to trade off.
And they say trying to get to this understanding wasn't easy.
People left the room and were upset, and nobody was really speaking to each other. We had to get Phil involved again for some mediation.
Eldon tells me they meet twice a year and that everyone here agrees the only way to keep things fair is to keep the lines of communication open.
Are there challenges ahead? Sure. Is the business always going to do great probably not. But at the end of the day, there is a clear purpose of where we're going, how we're going to get there, and if the unforeseen happens, we have a plan.
So Pam and Jack, as you can see, two different families with two totally different outcomes.